Well, I was born at a very young age in Denver, Colorado, and I left there when I was 6 months old, and with my parents drove across country. I lived in New York, and then I went from there to Michigan, Detroit, from there back to New York, from there in the late 40s out to San Francisco, and then from there back to Washington, D.C., where we lived in 2 or 3 different places. Before I left the United States in the 7th grade, I went to 21 different schools. And then from Washington, we moved to Portugal, where my dad was Vice President of United States Steel for North Africa and for Europe, Western Europe. And we moved there because he was responsible for building the bridge over the Tagus River. I was introduced to Juan Carlos, who was going to be the King of Spain, but we didn't know it at that time. He was about 3 years older than I was, and my friend who introduced me to him, he would come to the house in the afternoon because his tutor wanted him to learn English, and he was supposed to read like English magazines, and I had a big collection of comic books. And so he would borrow comic books, and we would play soccer in the front yard, and we'd go for rides in his yellow convertible Cadillac, of which he had a bodyguard and a driver. And then we moved to Cuba. I was there from the 9th grade until my senior year, when we got kicked out of Cuba. And I had a radio program on Sunday afternoons that was called Teenagers Turntable. And we would take requests. We were on the air for 4 hours every Sunday afternoon. But then also I started my track career, where I broke the Cuban Pan American record in the 1,500 meters. And I was invited to go to the Pan American Games, but it was going to be in Mexico City, but they thought that I was Cuban, so I couldn't go. But it worked out okay, because I got a scholarship to Princeton, which I turned down because they didn't have a good track team. But I did take a partial scholarship to NYU in New York. In New York, I joined NBC and worked on the Johnny Carson program, and that's where I met my wife, Linda, and we had our son, Shane. And we decided one cold February that it was just too cold, and we were tired of that. So we were going to go to Australia. So we moved to Australia, actually migrated, grew across the United States, took the Matson Line ship 3 weeks across the South Pacific, and stayed there for almost a year. And my wife and I decided that, well, Australia is really great. It's like our second home, really. And we're going to travel the rest of the way around the world and come back to the United States, which we did. We traveled through India and back through Egypt. And I got to be one of the last persons that climbed the Great Pyramids at Giza. And we went all through Europe and got back to the United States. I got a job in Ontario, California. And we decided that it was time for us to go into the travel business. And so we bought an agency down in Long Beach, and I was able, fortunately, through my incentive programs and group programs, to continue my travels. And after all the adventures that I've been extremely fortunate to be able to do, to have a wife that has allowed me to do the things that I've done, and she is so much a great part of it, that when you're in a deep, dark place in Africa or in South America, in the jungles, in the deserts of Baja, the deserts of Morocco, the ability to come home and have the stability of home and family. And I say that with regard to my son and my daughter-in-law and their family. There's a great stability in that. That's my take on it, and just ready for the next adventure.